Hi, I am Manish. I welcome you all to the podcast series Myntra Rising Stars. Here, we'll be meeting D2C founders who have found their feet in the D2C landscape. We will try and understand their insights, the way they went about the product market fit, branding, the way they have gone about scaling their brands, and their next big venture, and the way they are looking at driving growth in the near future. Stay tuned, there is exciting stuff coming your way. In my role at Myntra, I get to work with a lot of exciting D2C founders who have created their name in the industry and have been putting India on a strong growth roadmap as we move ahead. Today, we have with us Dhruv, founder and CEO of the Pant Project, who's like a shining star in the D2C ecosystem. Today, he will talk about his entrepreneurship journey and what lies ahead for him and how excited is he about the journey. Welcome, Dhruv.
Thanks, Manish. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Dhruv, we were doing a research some time back and we got to know that for the last 3 generations, you have been in the textile business. Interestingly, when I look at what happened post your studies in US, is you came and started off your own company, your own brand. It will be great to know about, how you thought about this entire thing and why you got into entrepreneurship. Mostly when people have a business, they would want to further extend their business, scale their business. But here is what you did, which is different, very different.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about that journey. My brother and I started this company together, and we've always been excited by consumer brands. I think what gives us, even today, the most satisfaction is seeing someone wearing our pants at the airport, at a train station, at the office. And I think that excitement is what drove us to start the Pant Project. When we looked at the consumer need state in India, I'd spent 8 years in the US, so I spent 6 years there. We came back and we felt there's this huge gap where pants is an underserved category. Everyone's focused on topwear. Everyone says you buy one and a half, two shirts for every pant that you buy. But honestly, there's like 200x competition in topwear. And pants is a category that's actually really hard to serve well. Fit is so important. You need comfort in your bottom wear. We felt, with the 50 years of experience we have in manufacturing for large global and Indian brands, we could really crack the equation on comfort for the Indian consumer. So it's really that gap of comfort for the Indian consumer. And even from a marketing standpoint, we were millennials, come back after, significant time of road, couldn't really relate to some of the, legacy Indian brands. And so we said there's a gap here where you can build a digital native brand, the power of e-commerce, really build online first, be very close to the Gen Z and millennial audience, and build something that's youthful, comfortable, and functional. So that's really how this journey started.
Super. So when I went through the brand name, the Pant Project itself sounds so interesting, isn't it?
So I'll tell you about the name. Udit, I have to give him the credit for that. My brother came up with it. Firstly, we want to be really focused and clear on what we're doing. And so we're the Pant Project, we're the Pant Pros. The name itself suggests we're the experts at pants, right? I think that category focus is super important. The second thing is a project is something that's always evolving over time. Project is never completed. You're sort of always working on it and trying to get better. So I think in the name itself, we wanted to give that sense of change. And e-commerce, it's always changing so fast. Consumer trends change every week, every month. I think the Pant Project as a brand is also constantly evolving with these consumer trends. And I think if you look at the logo, there's two brackets in the logo. When you look at the dictionary and define a word, you define it within brackets. And so we wanted to redefine the way people shop for pants. So that's the origin of the name, the Pant Project.
Interesting. Yeah. I really thought, and when I saw the name, the Pant Project, that, it's pretty intriguing, right? And good part is that, you talked about the logo with the brackets and it was fairly intriguing too. If I have to go back, for years and then look at, how the brand has evolved, I'm sure there would have been moments, right, wherein you would be just slogging around, getting the product right. When did you realize that, the product is just right for the audience that you were targeting?
Yeah. I think early days we did a lot of consumer trials. So before launching the brand, we had more than 1,000 friends and family try on our pants. And honestly, we were not that great at fit. No one is amazing the first time around, right? We used to get maybe 73% of orders first time, right? I think after 4 years, data on serving 10 lakh customers, we're now at like a 95% first time right on fit. And we see that trending to, 99%. I think somewhere into the journey, like 6 months to a year into the journey, and this was COVID, prime COVID, when no one is wearing pants, right? We were able to see repeat customers coming back and buying 3, 4, or 5 pants in their second order. And that's when we knew something is clicking in terms of product market fit. They're liking the flex tech waistband. They're liking the stretch and comfort that these pants offer. And that's why they're coming back and buying more. That was what was encouraging for us to say, okay, we have PMF now. Let's try to scale more aggressively. And honestly, that's where a platform like Myntra has been super helpful to us because the pace at which you can scale pan India is unimaginable when you can tap into the audiences that someone like a Myntra has in the fashion category.
Great. The most important thing is to get the product market fit right. And as you mentioned that, you figure out, the product market fit was right. Three things that become very important are: if the product is right, you should go ahead with the right pricing and the right placements, which is essentially about ensuring you are at the right places. Uh, you need to have a channel strategy in place. You talked about Myntra, so which is the right segue into the marketplace piece. Can it can you help me understand more about why a marketplace like Myntra? What is it that Pant Project and Myntra's partnership brought to the fore?
So we started the brand in October 2020, and it's been about 5 years now. If I had to break this digital journey down, I'd say the first 2 years we were primarily on our own website only, and it's in year three when we started to explore the power of marketplaces. And I'd say we were probably too slow to understand how big marketplaces could be. When we look at marketplaces today, they're a very significant part of our business. More than 20% of revenue is from marketplaces, and digital itself is 80% of our business. Myntra is by far and large the biggest marketplace in apparel. Here you have 75 million monthly active users on the platform. So if you're building an Indian apparel brand, it's the one you cannot ignore. You need to be present where your customers are present. Um, in terms of cracking the marketplace journey, I think you need several building blocks as a founder to go right. And so you said it right. The first is the product. The product has to be good. And if the product is good, you will build a history of ratings and reviews. And the way the algorithm works is naturally what consumers love and rate higher will show up higher and drive better organic results. The second is once you have a good product, you need to have the right marketing behind it. And I think your Rising Stars team has been fantastic in helping us figure out, when to push the right marketing properties, when to do PLA ads, when to do banners, when to do, deals and promotions during events, and make sure that the price is attractive for the consumer while making sure the unit economics work from the brand side of things. And I think apart from pricing and product, the inventory piece, having the right inventory in the right locations. And we've scaled up our SGIT from zero to now more than 60% of our sales on Myntra being SGIT, which is much faster service for the customer. Goal to get that to 85% SGIT. M now has gone from zero to more than 5% of our business. We see that being potential to be 15, 20, 25% of our business moving forward. So I'd say having the right inventory allocated to the channel and having it closer to the consumer is something that will definitely help scale too. So yeah, price, product, and the right marketing with the right inventory is the playbook to scale on a platform like Myntra.
So thanks, Dhruv, for covering the piece on the levers that you really believe have worked on Myntra. One that you spoke about is a traffic property, which is largely driven through ads, a combination of display, PLA, and now PCA. Second one that you talked about was a customer acquisition lever, which is where you talked about the entire deals thing and participating in events in a bigger way. You mentioned that it helps in terms of getting customers. Do you have a perspective on the CAC piece? Before you get there, let me just summarize the third point, right, which you're talking about, which is about speed. Speed, what you see is a conversion lever. You talked about forward placing the inventory on SGT, which is essentially fulfilled by Myntra for us. So a combination of traffic, conversion levers driven for convenience, for ensuring trials, which is where the entire piece around events come into play. And third one is the entire piece around speed. So all of these put together actually helps uh, has helped your brand gain both in terms of reach and in terms of trials, experiencing the product and expanding the customer base. Why delivering the best in class experience in terms of speed. Why we talk speed? There are a couple of things that come to my mind. One is, do you see it more as a fad? Because there are a lot of players now who are talking about speed. A lot of folks actually look at speed, especially the quick com kind of a speed, with a fair bit of hesitation or confusion, even ambiguity. How has it fared for you, and how are you keeping pace with it?
Lovely. Let me first answer the CAC question. So we saw on Myntra CACs that were half or lower than half than what they were on our website. I think that's the power of tapping into a large installed base of customers. I think now what you need to do is just get your product visible amongst that installed base, as opposed to trying to drive fresh traffic to your own website and getting that to convert. And the CAC part is also related to speed. I think we've seen this with being on M now. When we are on M now, conversion rate is 2 to 3x higher because the inventory is closer to the customer and delivery is a couple of hours instead of a few days, and that actually helps the entire funnel work better from a marketing perspective. So I think CAC is very related not only to the product quality and the marketing, but also the speed of fulfillment. And in an ideal world, you want that trio working together. To answer your question on is speed really required or not? I know there's been a lot of activity in this quick commerce world, and at least for categories like grocery, it's become a norm now to expect 10-minute delivery. My personal views for pants, maybe 10 minutes is not that important. It's not like medicines, you don't need it immediately. But I do think we're moving to a world where if you can get speed, quality, and price, why not? And I do think the new standard may be a few hours or at least same day delivery for the majority of orders. Because if a customer had to choose between two things, all things being equal, one is faster and one is slower, they'll always pick the faster option. And I think in this world of instant gratification, even as a core fashion brand, even as someone who's staple in your wardrobe, we've seen that conversion rate is very linked to speed of delivery. So the faster you can deliver, the better chances you have at winning a repeat customer.
Got it. There is another big question, right, which surrounds the entire speed proposition. Most of the brands have a perception that, the inventory has to be forward placed. And there is a perception that, it might lead to reduction in sales because you block inventory, you put it forward, right? So, what's your perspective on that, and how are you going about managing it?
We had the same reservation, honestly, initially when we started, and we were 100% inventory in our own warehouse, fulfilled by Pant Project. I think over time, with the guidance from the Rising Stars team, we tried to allocate 20% of inventory, 30%, 40% to fulfilled by Myntra. And today we're, as I said, above 60% fulfilled by Myntra. I think that faith has come over time by seeing the results from allocating inventory to a channel. And we try to separate our product mix to in core and non-core. And I think the biggest learning has been in apparel, you can't go out of stock in black. Black is like a holy grail color. Everyone needs black always. And you can't go out of stock size 32, 34, 36, 38. Those are your core menswear sizes, and they need to be always in stock across every single channel. So if you can keep your core inventory always in stock, then with that fashion inventory, you can play with newness. that 20% of your inventory can be constantly changing. But the fundamentals are built around these core units. For us, they've just been three categories, formal pants, power stretch pants, which is a category we've pioneered within the pants world, and jeans, which is actually our fastest growing category. And while people think, it may be a crowded space, I think there's enough space for innovation in terms of new product, even within these existing categories. So that's where we've tried to really differentiate.
That's that's good. Just one point that I have on this is when you started forward placing the inventory, how did you go about managing your inventory? Because the larger thing is when you forward place anything, right? You have to be very sharp in terms of planning. You mentioned that we need to be good in terms of predicting the core while we move ahead with fashion. Is there any formula that you have been applying in terms of managing depth of fashion versus core? And as you expand, right, or put it for speed, working capital is bound to go up. Did that happen in your case?
I think there's a few things you can do here to improve your working capital efficiency. The first is you want to always reduce the lead time to produce any product. And we've managed to do that by holding certain yarns in stock or holding certain grayish fabrics in stock so that when you need to replenish, you just need to do the stitching and you can replenish in 15 days or you can replenish in 30 days. I think the second thing is we have an 80-20 mix and we know our 20 bestsellers. And so we've now sold those for 5 years. We have good data on what sizes, what styles are selling. And we're able to do some predictive analytics with tech there and produce ahead of demand, knowing that there's a high probability that that pant will sell. So I think it's a combination of the data forecasting engine, which has only gotten stronger with more and more data, as well as working on the supply chain side, having a diverse pool of suppliers. And I think there too, you need at least three vendors, supplier partners for each product category. You want to ensure that you can have the right flexibility in your supply chain on minimum order quantities. I think brands often, when they're young, optimize for the best price and try to place too large orders that come too infrequently. I think we've learned it's better to buy 1,000 units every 2 weeks than to buy 10,000 units once and then not buy again for 3 weeks, for 3 months. So I think we've learned a few of those tricks of the trade on the back end. And fundamentally, I think as a brand, there are two problems you're solving at one time. One is demand creation and sort of being relevant in the consumer's mind with attractive product and attractive marketing. But the other is the backbone of supply chain and making sure when demand does come, you can fulfill that supply very adeptly. I think as founders, what you're doing is always trying to balance those two hats. And in our case, we're fortunate that Udit looks at the brand building, product, marketing, demand creation functions. And I actually spend a lot of my time on the back end, ops, tech, and finance.
Great. In fact, I would say that a lot of stuff that you've been putting out on LinkedIn talks about a couple of things largely, and one big point that I can carry from the message that you put across is that inventory of, I would say, availability of the right SKUs is very, very important. When you have spent on marketing, when you have gotten organic traction on a platform, ensuring that you are available across sizes becomes very, very important. I guess you've talked about 32, 34, and 36.
Yeah, I'll even tell you for new launches though. So you work so much on product innovation, right? And we worked on these inklock black, no fade jeans. We took them to the Hobby Guard, we tested them, and 30 washes, they don't fade. The thing is, if you don't buy enough inventory for a new launch, however well that campaign does, in 15 days you're sold out and you've driven a crazy amount of traffic, but someone has nothing to buy, right? And so the key is not only getting the marketing right, but having that back end loaded, taking sufficiently large bets. And we've seen that with our latest launch, the Malai pants on Myntra. It's something we did as a Myntra exclusive. And I think when you then work with the platform and the platform also has the confidence in the brand to say, hey, let's launch this product together. Let's do some crazy co-marketing around it. Let's get the right banners. Let's get the right properties. Let's really make some noise in the menswear space so that when people think pants, they think the Pant Project and Myntra is the place to go and shop Malai pants. And then you start seeing people searching Malai pants on the platform. That's when you really create buzz. And for that, you need to then have the inventory sorted so that your core styles and sizes are, always available for the consumer.
And you pleasantly surprised when you lost Malai pens on the.
Yeah, they've flown off the rack. I think we bought 3x what we thought we would buy. We thought it'll last 90 days. I think we're going to be sold out in 45 and we're going to be rushing the replenishment get back here.
Superb. It's like building new categories, getting into newer use cases becomes very, very important as we move ahead.
So, Dhruv, now comes the elephant in the room. I'm sure you would have guessed it.
We've talked about product, we've talked about placements, channel strategy. The biggest piece that I come across, and I am sure you would be taking decisions on a day in, day out basis, is pricing. It will be great if you could talk more about your pricing strategy and the overall strategy, how you go about doing pricing, because I believe there are three elements to it. One is that, we need to offer the right value with the right quality and ensure there is enough accessibility, because it does have an impact on the total addressable market, the TAM that we talk about. So how at Pant Project do you go about your overall pricing strategy, ensuring that, all the three, which is value, quality, and accessibility, are maxed out, right, to get the highest returns or the highest ROI for the brand, while ensuring that the brand is built with utmost care. There is a perception that, when you take some actions on pricing, the brand gets impacted. But the other piece is that, you also look at gaining customers, broadening your reach. I'm sure you have figured that out. It will be really great to get some insight in terms of how you've gone about the entire pricing strategy.
So, I think pricing starts with first what sort of brand you want to build. And the Pant Project is trying to be a premium, aspirational, yet accessible brand. And I think we think of our audience as any working professional, Indian, male or female across the country, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 city. And we think of our audience as someone who really values a few things. They value really high quality product that's extremely comfortable, and they value convenience, which means speed of delivery. They also value something that's durable. And so you can charge more for your product if they know it's going to last 30 wears, 40 wears, 50 wears, 100 wears, because then on a cost per wear basis, they think, hey, this is good value for money. That said, you're spot on. India is a value conscious market. The Indian consumer is extremely smart. I'd say the perception mismatch though that value conscious means things have to be cheap. At the Pant Project, we've shown that at ASPs, 1.5 times, 2 times what the average of other brands might be, we're able to convert at 2%, 3%, 4% conversion rates, which are fairly high on the platform, right? And I think that comes from understanding that you need stack pricing. You need an entry level price point for your brand. For us, that's the 1500 rupee price point mark for a pair of pants. You need a core price range, and that's around 2,500 rupees for a pair of pants. And then you need some premium or luxury offering. That could be 3.5, 4, 5,000 rupees a pair of pants in our kids. And I think understanding that you can have attractive deals and offers, especially during events, on your entry product, so that you drive customer acquisition. And what you trade off in value to the consumer there, you gain in lower cost of customer acquisition. And that's when you can go in a month like Diwali. If you're acquiring 25,000 customers a month, you can acquire maybe 100,000 customers just in 1 month by really stepping on that, marketing and growth engine with a great, Diwali festival offer. That said, I think with pricing for D2C brands, what's worked well for us is having these buckets really well defined and then sticking to that strategy across the entire year with a very regular rhythm and calendar year on year for deals and offers. I think as founders, sometimes if I had to give advice here, I'd say we're too reactionary. So we see 1 month go well and we say, oh, okay, let's keep the pricing high forever. Or we see one deal or offer work and we're like, let's do this again and again. It's so dynamic that same deal or offer isn't going to perform the same the next month. And you need to keep your rhythm, your pricing strategy over a 5-year mark or a 10-year mark to really establish some sort of recall in a consumer's mind. And I think trust is actually built then when a consumer knows, hey, with a reasonable degree of certainty, these pants are always going to be within this price range. I think that delivers trust so that they say, When I need them, I will shop them. And this is good value for money because they figured out at this price, enough consumers are willing to buy this product frequently. So that's how we thought about pricing. I think one thing we're seeing is a trend towards premiumization. And so we've launched more and more, luxury twill fabrics, more and more water repellent pants, things with features that are very unique. And those we've been able to sell at 2.5 or 3.5 or 4,500 a pair because they have something unique to them as a product. They're value added to the consumer. I think also we've learned with Myntra that there's immense value in doing Myntra exclusive product for the Myntra audience. And where the Rising Stars program has been helpful, we actually sit every quarter with your design team and we understand, hey, what's trending in menswear? What is the next 6 months going to look like? And what does your audience need from a brand like the Pant Project? And where are the gaps in this bottom wear portfolio? I think when you crack that and you can say, hey, Korean is trending, Korean Pintak is something that doesn't exist in the market. 1990 is a sweet price point for acquisition for a customer in pants. Can the Pant Project be that brand to do Korean Pintak pants at scale? Or even in denims, right? Jeans is a super crowded market. Everyone's doing blue jeans. Why don't we take workwear jeans and do khaki, earthy tones, ecru, beige, and do something that looks like a jean chino that you can wear to the office. It's a little bit more semi-formal, smart casual, but you can also wear out with friends. And I think then you price that attractively and say, okay, there's a set of brands that's extremely premium. You don't want to compete in that space. You're not a luxury brand, but there's also a set of brands that's in our case is sub 1,000 rupees, and that's also not competing with you in some way. You can let them do their pricing their way, but you stick true to your course in what your pricing strategy is and what your value proposition to the consumers. And when I think about the brand, that's what I think about. A brand is a promise delivered consistently over time. And so, the elements to that is the promise has to be clearly defined, and then the delivery of that has to be consistent. And then the hardest bit is you just have to be patient and give it that time to compound and scale.
It's very interesting, I would say, in terms of your approach on the entire pricing piece. You actually dwelled on a couple of points. One was that you have a price laddering kind of approach, wherein you basically earmark the entry pricing and have offers, or you participate in events just to ensure that you are able to get in customers. And then what you talked about is that, you have value plus stuff. When you say value plus, it's basically about the various fabrics, the water repellents, and the other things that we're talking about from a future standpoint, which actually help you upgrade your customers, right? I'm sure you would have looked at data in terms of repeats, the ones whom you acquired in events, right? How were they able to perform over a period of time? The base of customers that you have acquired, right? How they have fared over a period of time, and how have the Pan project team been able to upgrade them to the newer stuff that they're bringing in. So the other bigger takeaway is also in terms of building more utility if you want to premiumize your category, your portfolio. And here, as I say, in case of Pan project, it's about the newer set of pants, right? Whether it is the twill material that we're talking about, or jeans as a category, or workwear jeans that you spoke about a while back, right? So that brings me to the point around the entire innovation piece, right? When you talk about so many products, so many features, getting deep into pants and solving for pants, it means that we are looking at getting customers, upgrading them, right, and gaining more value, not just as a brand, right, but delivering that value to the customer, right, in terms of the right set of products, uh, based on their need states or need gaps. I'm given to understand that, there's a fair bit of innovation that goes on in the Pan project. You already spoke about the brackets that you have in the logo, which signifies that the brand is evolving and is bringing something new on a regular basis. Uh, you also spoke about your Malay pants, the way you've moved into different fabrics. Can you give us a sneak peek in terms of the innovation that is happening today at the Pan project? I'm sure the brand keeps you excited. I'm not sure about the number of categories that you're thinking to bring in this space, the number of use cases that you would want to cater to. I've seen a lot of brands, right, who are moving into party spaces, or they are catering to several locations, right? So Pant Project, being the Pant Project, how is it headed is something that will really help us understand how you're looking at the brand and what's keeping you excited as we move ahead.
Yeah, let me talk to you about the innovation cycle. It all starts with identifying a consumer need, and then we go back to the lab and we do a lot of R&D and testing. That's our core DNA. We're product guys. We really obsess over every detail, right from the yarn to the fabric to the finishing to the stitching. And it can take us up to 2 years to develop a new product like the nanotechnology around our water repellent pants or the no fade interlock black jeans. We do some really deep testing in the lab. I think once we've cracked a breakthrough innovation, what excites us is then going to market quickly and scaling that up very, very quickly. And I think that's an engine that over the last 6 months to 12 months, we've really learned along with Myntra how to co-market innovation together. I think Malai is a beautiful example because not only is the product extremely breakthrough, it's super soft, extremely stretchable, perfect for the Indian climate, very breathable. But the name Malai itself invokes this sense of nostalgia. It invokes this buttery softness in your mind. And it's not something, people think of pants, you don't think of food. When you think about food, it's a very positive association. So I think that mix of marketing along with the product is where the brand innovation really scales up quickly. And I think I have to give a kudos to our marketing team there, led by Sukita, who's our CMO and head of digital, because they have done a fantastic job in taking a boring category like pants, which nobody thinks about and is an afterthought, and making it something that's central, to our brand. So I think that's where true innovation lies, and innovation also lies in, disrupting something that for hundreds of years has been the same, and taking a fresh look at a category that people ignored. So we're actually excited by the boring, and we don't find that 2 year product development process to be painful. We actually enjoy every step of the journey. It's almost like you're trying to figure out pieces of a puzzle, and when you hit one breakthrough in terms of development of a new hollow fiber yarn or a new finishing route or dye stuff or technology, that's what excites us. I think we're hardcore apparel guys, and we truly want to build the best functional apparel for the Indian consumer. Best in global quality product, break all of those myths that it can't be done in India, and then scale it for the Indian consumer digitally.
Great. If I had to ask you now that, what's the quantum of innovation? How many things are you innovating at the Pan project at this point in time? What would be your answer?
Yeah, I'd actually say we don't do that much innovation that fast. We're a core fashion brand, and we're not doing 50 new styles a week. And I think that's also, there's truth to the fact that the consumer wants a lot of choice, and that's why Myntra does so much curation of so many different styles. But there's also value in as a single brand focusing on a narrow set of things. And so our innovation is at the moment focused around a few categories. For the Indian consumer, travel is something that's increasing year on year, and it's a trend that's not going to stop for the next decade to come. So we're working on a new set of travel pants that will be, extremely wrinkle resistant, easy to pack, lightweight, durable. The idea is, you can go to Singapore on a 5 day trip, you just carry two pants with you, and you wear those same two pants because they're super sweat resistant. You throw them in the machine, they dry in a few hours. Just really, really convenient travel pants. And I think travel is a category with athleisure that's extremely, fast growing. We're also looking to grow our casuals part of the wardrobe. So we've just recently launched sweatpants. We're growing our cargo pants collection. And we think the casuals part of our portfolio has a lot of, growth opportunities. Lastly, I'd say on the fashion side, we're looking at a lot of subtle menswear patterns. So these are your micro checks, your houndstooths, your, twills, and, very rich herringbones, nice tweeds, sort of typical heritage menswear stuff, We think that the boring will never go out of fashion. It's actually timeless. And Indian men do love something that they can wear to a wedding or something that they can wear to an occasion that stands out but still looks classy. And so we're not going for that eye popping, sort of attention grabbing sort of pants. We want you to look subtly confident and just be really comfortable in a pair of pants that look stylish but well fitted.
I clearly see that passion around pants coming out, right? You talked about a lot of styles, right, which are new to me, right? But it clearly reflects the kind of I would say research that has gone into understanding consumers, understanding trends, and I would say this is where you have blended the legacy that you bring, right, in the textile industry and your understanding of today's consumer, which has really worked well. Just tell us, I'm going to the next segment. It's largely about you as an entrepreneur, right? What would be your advice to modern day budding D2C entrepreneurs, both in terms of building their brand, scaling their brand, and ensuring that they do the right things to keep scaling them? I see there are reservations or maybe a perception around doing a brand.com and holding back on scale from scale on marketplaces, right? What would be your advice? And I would say that it could be an industry agnostic advice, right? In terms of how they should approach. So it will be really great to hear from you in terms of what should these D2C brands do in terms of scaling their brand while building consumer engagements and ensuring the scale and scale fast.
Yeah. I think the number one killer of consumer brands is returns and exchanges. And I think the advice would be obsess over product market fit. And in our case, that's actual fit of the pants, right? What we did very early on is obsess over every element of fit of your pant, from your waistband to the rise to the crotch length, hip, thigh, bottom opening, calf. Just make sure they're the best fitted products so that when a consumer buys the first time, it fits them right the first time. I think the reservation on marketplaces in particular that I've heard, I'd say, the way around that is really to deliver product with a simple size guide that consumers can understand, that's consistent, with styles that year on year offer the same fit so that once a consumer has found their size in your brand, they can buy that size blindly across any style and will get repeats. And I think obsessing there on building the right product so that you don't need to do a return or exchange is the key unlock to being able to scale with good unit economics. I think the Pant Project as a brand, no one's right the first time. So we also would have 40, 50% returns and exchanges when we first launched. But I think today we're, sub 20% on returns and exchanges on a platform level. And I think that's a very healthy number to be at for an e-com brand. I'd say overall as a company, we're in the single digits on returns and exchanges. And I think that's one of the biggest indicators that customers are loving your product. So I would say repeat customers is the North Star on which you build your brand. You need to focus on retention revenue as strongly as you focus on acquisition revenue. And that will come through having sticky product that doesn't need a return or exchange. Because no matter how smooth your return or exchange process is, that delight from first time right can never be matched, even if in 24 hours I get you, something that's exchanged.
First thing that you talked about is the product market fit and being obsessed about innovating the product. You also talked about the factor in returns, which applies more to the fashion world, wherein obsessing around the product actually help you improve your bottom line too and power growth. Apart from product market fit, you had spoken about a couple of other things. One was related to participation from a channel strategy standpoint. The second one that you had talked about is the right pricing strategy. Uh, Third one, if I am recollecting right, is also around participation speed. It will be great to hear from you your perspective in terms of how the D2C founders could break the shells and look at participating uh, along these lines, pushing these levers in a bigger way. What would be your take on this piece?
Yeah, I'll give you a take with a live example, right? Where, a month away from a large event at Myntra in March. And I think, your URS is something that you'll make a lot of noise around as a platform. You give sales different names, even BFF as a sale. And I think the planning phase for a brand has to start 6 months before a major event. So if I had to give advice to founders, I'd say you need to know one season in advance what's that product that's going to be the hero for the upcoming season. Start to take your bets on inventory and start allocating that in the right warehouses. Do that based on demand. So, for example, we know 15% of demand is in the east, so we send 15% of goods to the Calcutta warehouse. 25% in the north, so you send 25% of goods to the Delhi warehouse. That way, your product is placed where the consumer is going to buy it. And then once you have that, have your deal calendar set out, and okay, I'm going to run my biggest offer of the year in Diwali and Black Friday. My second biggest might be Holi. I'll do maybe a couple of other offers in the year, and that's when I really want to promote acquisition. The rest of the time, I'll be on my business as usual pricing, retention. And I think then, once you have that plan and playbook set, then on the execution, I think it's a day-to-day being very agile. But I think that's more of a 20% maneuvering here and there. I think 80% of your strategy can be well locked in, 6 to 3 months prior to an event. And what I often see is founders scrambling, calling up and saying 4 weeks before the event, what can I do? And unfortunately, a lot of times I say, hey, for this event, there's really not much you can do 4 weeks ahead. But why don't you start planning for Diwali now? Because you have enough time. So I think that's what's really helped us with your teams at Myntra Rising Stars program is working closely on a plan that is at least 2 quarters ahead of where we want to go.
Sure. So what you're saying is that when why we get the product market fit. Second piece is around customer acquisition and focusing on retention. What you spoke about is customer acquisition largely during events, right? Irrespective, I would say the scale of the event could be small or big, right? But it's like a plan at least that you have in place 3 to 6 months in advance in terms of acquisitions. You also spoke about an innovation pipeline, exclusivities you would want to have, right? Depending on your channel strategy, right? Putting and the TG that's available for you on that specific channel, right? So it's one. There's obviously from an assortment perspective, we talked about a lot of innovation, participating in events, planning in advance, because we want to leverage the traffic that's coming in the event, right? Because the scale could be 10, 20x, you don't know. And then the kind of retention you would be driving actually helps you scale your business better and faster, right? So,
Sorry to interrupt. I'll talk about one more learning that's coming to be in scaling is understanding the different audience segments within Myntra. And so the Pant Project initially was a millennial first brand. Being a millennial myself, I think that 30 to 40-year-old working professional was the one we understood to serve naturally the best. And I think two growth unlocks that came for us is when we understood you can't ignore Gen Z as a segment. Gen Z is a super fast growing, extremely fashion forward segment. And that's when we launched a product like baggy jeans, for the Gen Z audience. And that just took off and went absolutely, viral. So I think this insight into understanding the segments within that. And then the other is, there is this segment of, slightly elderly working professionals who have insane purchasing power and they're looking for something premium and luxury. And they're starved for good Indian brands doing that. They sometimes say, I'll only go and shop when I go abroad. And I'm like, why do you need to do that anymore? There are enough D2C brands in India. My wardrobe is stacked with D2C brands, top to bottom. And I can see you're also in D2C brands top to bottom. So I think that's the potential of D2C in India. That's what excites me as a founder. And honestly, when I was asked to come on this podcast, I said, I'm happy to make time for it because for me, if this can inspire even one D2C founder to scale a brand to 100 crores, it will be time well spent. So yeah, that's, understanding that customer segment and understanding how that's evolving, that excites me in terms of India potential. Everyone knows the numbers in consumer in India. 2030 is going to be a massive market. We know how quickly Gen Z demand is growing. We know the purchasing power is growing. I think the demand is there to capture. It's now our job as founders to figure out how to do that.
that's a superb summarization of how you're looking at the entire ecosystem and urging the founders to build their brands. The time is ripe. Consumers are experimenting, and we're giving every brand a chance in terms of establishing themselves. Staying put with the right product at the right price with the right experiences, right, is what will help us scale a brand. Leveraging the right tools on marketplaces like Myntra does help. Hit scale, a deeper understanding of how you go about the entire planning process, having a hawk's eye in terms of your customer acquisition costs, leveraging events in a big way, and ensuring that the customers that you've gotten into your fold, you are obsessed about repeats. Having an innovation pipeline, a product laddering based on pricing in place does help you upgrade or premiumize your audience. I believe these are the bigger takeaways that I have from this session, Dhruv. Right? It's been a phenomenal interaction till now. Primarily, you have been focused on the male TG at this point in time. What is the point of view in terms of bringing pants or trousers for women?
That's a great question. Your Rising Stars team has shown us the data on women's potential on the platform, and it's a huge, very exciting opportunity. I think as a brand, we've chosen to do one thing, do it very, very well, do it for a long period of time, and then move on to the next frontier. I think for the first 5 years, it's been men's pants, and we've really tried to establish leadership in men's pants. I can't say when, but at some point in time, I think we won't be able to ignore doubling down on women's pants. And I know there's a lot of people, even within the Myntra team, who are waiting for that day. It's something that we're definitely actively considering, and we know is a massively underserved need and a huge market.
Good to hear that from you. So, we'll do for a rapid fire, Ruth. Ready for a rapid fire? Let's do this. Brace yourself for this. Okay. One word that defines the Pant Project.
Comfort.
Best-selling pant style on Myntra. A your product you would recommend to everyone.
Malai, you have to try Malai.
Right. Innovation you're most proud of.
Interlock black no fade jeans. Let me tell you the story on that one, right? We actually went and got the lumen rating of those pants done, which is to see how deep and dark the black is and how long it won't fade for. And this is truly the deepest, darkest black that we could create. And it's something that we had done 2 years ago in the formal pants category and were able to recreate within the jeans category at scale. I think that technical innovation took a lot of back-end work. So I say Interlock black no fade, hands down.
Great. Favorite customer review in one line.
So many of them. These pants are better than any global brand out there. I think we've had set of customers say they used to shop in the US and they've just completely stopped doing that. And they just buy from the Pant Project now. For me, that's a moment of great pride where they equate us with the best in global.
Biggest win from a Myntra sale event.
Diwali numbers just blew our mind. More than double the expectation that we had. So excited for this Diwali that's to come.
Room celebrity to wear the Pant Project. And here you need to be conscious.
I will give you a curveball. I have to ask my brother. As of now, he's been the dream celebrity promoting our brand on Instagram. As I said, I look at the back end. I'd be the wrong person to answer this.
Okay. One tip for prospering on e-commerce.
Control your inventory very tightly.
Right. What's next for the brand in one word?
Innovation. We're just going to keep innovating in terms of new product and pushing the boundaries of what's possible on the best pants in the country.
NIM Pant Project.
The future has to get double digits, then 50% of sales. I'm very, very excited, genuinely, about him now as the next frontier.
And the last question for the rapid fire. One thing that Myntra does very well.
New launches. You guys are the kings of new launches. You're the best at promoting a new launch for a brand. And I think the testament to that is, as Pant Project, in 12 months, we've grown 4x on Myntra on the back of these new product launches. So been very excited with the potential for new launches on Myntra.
Thank you, though. It's so heartening to hear from you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to join us for this session, our first episode of Rising Stars. It's been a phenomenal learning session wherein, you talked about your challenges, how you go about the brand. When about scaling up, you looked at a marketplace like Myntra, leveraged the tools available on Myntra, looked at the customer acquisition potential, leveraged almost all platform levers that were available, right? From ads to events to speed. And I guess your adoption around SJ, which is fulfilled by Myntra, and now, right, about which you've been raving about and saying that, you would want to increase your participation. While also talking about the challenges around speed, which is about planning and how you go about optimizing the entire working capital piece, and then talking about the pipeline of innovation and the overall pricing strategy, right, in terms of how you straddle your price to acquire customers and push for retention. So it's been a phenomenal learning session, and I'm sure it will do a lot of good for the entire D2C audience and the ecosystem. Thank you, Dhruv, once again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Manish. Enjoyed the conversation.